afternoon. I am Marina Seward. I was born in Waterloo, Wisconsin on July 3rd, 1878. My mother died in childbirth when I was 10. I was with her when she died. I grew up in Wisconsin and in South Dakota, and I went to normal school, and then I taught normal school for 5 years before I got married to Ralph Seward. I want to share a part of a speech I gave when I lived in Michigan before I returned to Wisconsin. The year is 1913, and in 1920, women were given the right to vote. The question under discussion tonight resolved that women should have the ballot. Yes, she should. Why should she not? She is upon a level with man in every respect, morally and intellectually. I dare say there's not a man in this audience tonight who will sit here and allow anyone to tell him that his wife, mother, or sister is inferior to himself or anyone else. And yet members of the jury, my opponents will claim that they should not have equal rights with them. My opponents will claim that the place for woman is at home, that she is a homemaker, and therefore must confine herself to the kitchen, to the parlor, and the walls of the house. So the place for the butter maker is in the factory, making butter, and the place for the farmer is on the farm, and the place of everyone is in his place of business. For it stands to reason that a man can't till his soil if one half of the time he's loafing and the other half riding around. Likewise, it stands to reason that a woman can't keep her home if one half time she's gadding and the other on the roam. Do you men neglect your duty when you go to the polls to vote? You answer no. Then why should a woman? It is the duty of every free-born American citizen to go to the polls on Election Day and cast their ballot for the laws of this land to rule ourselves and our posterity, to rule our wives, our mothers, and our children. And is not woman a free-born American citizen as much as man? Yes. Then why should she not vote? The Declaration of our forefathers in 1776 that taxation without representation is tyranny, and for which belief thousands of lives were given and the best Puritan blood of the land was shed, is still practiced all over this mighty republic, where men rule with an iron hand and women must obey. Why? Because she's a woman, a weak, insignificant being of the gentler sex, fit only for drudgery and the entertainment of men, for man was made to command, women to obey, man to order, woman to submit. She may hold property, but must let man regulate and tax it. She must accept his laws because she is only a weak woman. Is this right? You answer no. But my opponents say yes, for it is an established law, therefore keep it. When a man is down, keep him down. Do not let him get up. Likewise, hold woman under the bonds of servitude forever. But if they are once loosened, the mighty, noble man, manly man who has been clenching them may in turn be made to suffer. Such will be the statements and arguments of my opponents. How many of you men would for a moment allow a woman to dictate the amount of tax you shall pay year upon year upon your property? Has she not as good a right to dictate about your property as you have about hers? My opponents will claim that women's suffrage would demoralize business, throw people out of employment, and other marvelous things. But the U.S. Census report of 1900 reveals the absolute falsity of these arguments. For this shows that there's been a large percentage of increase in population in the amount of capital invested in manufacturing, farming, mining in every state since the granting of equal suffrage in 3 states in the United States. I'm going to conclude with the closing remarks of Marina. We are all in this great and mighty universe for a purpose. We each have our life work. What suits one suits not another. But whatever we undertake, let us pursue it to timeless perfection. Let us strive for the betterment of humanity to do that which is right and just. Give women the ballot. Allow her to cooperate with man in ruling and making laws for ourselves and our prosperity. And in the future we will have laws honorable and just, God-fearing and temperate, above reproach, and a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, fit for a God who rules the universe, look down upon the children below and say, all is well. Thank you for coming.
Hello, I'm Martin Nelson Seward. I'm a pioneer. Came out to Astlin in 1847 with my family to homestead a farm. We lived in a log cabin that I made there until we finished the frame house, which was finished in 1863. Never did put paint on that house, but it was still a good house. We left Guilford, Connecticut, because my wife had a cough. There was a lot of smoke-filled air out there, and we went for the clean air of the frontier. We also left to participate in the anti-slavery movement. I learned the trade of cabinet making from my father. This chair is one that I made, and I've carried this plenty in my life. Carried my tools around to do my work. After I graduated from the Guilford school system, I'm basically a self-taught man. I was determined to financially help my older brother Edwin, who wanted to go to school and went to Yale and graduated in 1838, and then he went to theological school after that. Some of you may think I'm just a simple pioneer country farmer. I'll tell you, I'm a dedicated Christian. I'm dedicated to changing this world. My family joined with my brother Edwin after he left the Astlin Church, and we founded the Congregational Church in Lake Mills as an anti-slavery church. The membership of the church voted to say that they were anti-slavery. It was an unpopular stand at the time. And then we also advocated for temperance. Not exactly another popular stand at the time, but it was a part of our deep Christian conviction. Our ministry in Lake Mills was supported by the abolitionist leader, Lewis Tappan, and the American Missionary Association. Lewis Tappan was really famous in abolitionist circles. As Christians, we're going to change this world. We're going to end the evil of slavery and establish equality, just like my grandfather who fought in the American Revolution. I support the Republican Party and Abraham Lincoln. Christians of Lake Mills are determined to play our part to change the Constitution and change our nation, to abolish slavery, because we're inspired by our Christian faith. I also did some other things. I built the first bridge in Jefferson over the Rock River in 1851. I got the contract and completed it. Even though I'm self-educated, I was superintendent of schools for Jefferson County in the early days. I believe in supporting education. My life took a turn in 1874. I built a cheese factory on our farm, one of the first in the county. I received a certification for two of the best cheeses at the 1876 Philadelphia Sesquicentennial Celebration. I'm also an entrepreneur. Starting with my cheese making operation, I also invested $1,000 in the agricultural manufacturing company, a Fargo business, in 1860. My wife, Mary, has always worked as a tailoress. We raised 6 kids on the farm. I just hope when my days are at their end, my obituary will say, I was a kind and loving man who respected everyone. Thank you.
So you call yourself cheeseheads, huh? I was the original Wisconsin cheesehead. And I'm not talking about any leather football or Packers or green and gold regalia. No, I'm talking about my cows in those green pastures over there and producing that golden butter as gold as the sun. You know, some shysters tried to copy butter by adding some food coloring to oleo. You know, O-L-E-O, oleo. I believe you call it margarine now. Well, it is cheap to make. So all they did was add a little food coloring to some oil to imitate butter, fooling the people into thinking it was the real thing. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you today. My name is ASA Favell. I live just north of here in Favell Grove. I moved here with my family from New York. Came with my wife, Jane, and my 3 children, Eliza, Tamron, and Miriam. We lost poor Miriam when she was only 5 years old. And you know, then it was only a couple of years later and my wife Jane passed away as well. But soon after, I married Helen, 30 years my younger. Well, you might think that's kind of unusual in this day of age, but at that time, that was not that unusual. We had a daughter, Jenny, and I tell you what, she was smart as a whip. You know, she graduated with the first graduating class at Lake Mills High School. Helen and I spent many happy years on the farm. I grew up in a family of 12 brothers and sisters, and many children and grandchildren. Many who took an interest in the dairy herding, especially my brother John. He came west from me with New York, and he settled on a farm near Milford over there. I think some of you probably heard of that. Well, we raised reasonable size herds of 25 to 30 cows. And, you know, they could produce up to 5,000 pounds of cheese a year. And, you know, one year we even had 7,000 pounds of cheese. More weight than all of you combined. And we produced several hundred pounds of butter as well. We closely monitored the health of our herd and the conditions in which they lived. We made sure that they grazed in green pastures, and we set up a milking schedule. And you know what? We stuck to it. We had happy cows. And in turn, they produced a lot of milk. We were some of the few farmers in the area that actually developed that philosophy. Traditional methods of animal husbandry were becoming out of date. The family cow was not a priority. It was often fed poor food and vegetation, and farmers had loose standards of which of managing the milk. Most family farms, they could only produce enough milk. They couldn't even make a product with it. They only had enough for themselves. And if they were lucky, maybe they made enough milk to share with their neighbors. But about this time, some small farms started to pool their resources together into co-ops so they could produce products and resources to share. In fact, Annie Pickett of Lake Mills, she was the first one to run a creamery in the area. The first female operator, in fact. Yeah. We transformed the dairy herd industry behind just the cow into a dairy business in which to produce products such as cheese and butter and probably your favorite, ice cream. Many of the new standards that you see in the dairy industry today were started right here in south central Wisconsin, including the contributions from the Favell family in this beautiful prairie that I call Favell Grove. The end.
My name is Arthur Angsberg. I'm 17 and I am the son of Conrad and Minnie Angsberg. My father owned a drugstore on Main Street across from the park. I wanted to be just like my father. I was the oldest of 7, but the first died during the scarlet fever epidemic. I worked every day at the drugstore. I sold sodas to the sweethearts that came after school and watched the little kids' eyes dart from one colorful candy to the next. The beautiful clean stores with apothecary jars lining the walls and boxes so high I needed the step stool to reach them. I miss working there. I wanted to follow right in my dad's footsteps. I was 17 years old, 8 months, and 3 days, and I had an accident. It was a stormy evening. I was at the drugstore with my father and Dr. Will. A patient came in needing a bottle of Lydia Pinkham patent medicine. I was happy to fetch it for my father. I made sure to grab our handy electric light. I hooked a cord around my finger and held it up so I could see and look for the bottle of medicine. When I wrapped around the cord, a worn part on the cord touched my skin and gave me one heck of a shock. I fell down and hit my head on the bottom stone step. A passerby outside came in and told my father, and they came down. They carried me up 2 flights of stairs, but I never woke up. He blamed himself for what had happened. He should have fixed the cord, but electricity was such a newfangled thing back then. He didn't know. He lost interest after I was gone. His health started to decline, so he took a long trip out to Idaho and Utah for mining interests. In better spirit, he sold the store to Herman Setz and became an insurance agent. Thank you for coming. Come again soon and watch your step as you continue on the tour.
My name is Earl Jeffrey Nestle. Earl is my dad's name, so I always use the name Jeff, my middle name. I was born February 4th, 1946, and grew up in Lake Mills, the oldest of 3 boys, born to Dr. and Cindy Nestle. My dad was one of 4 physicians practicing in Lake Mills at the time and was chief of staff at the Fort Atkinson Hospital. I was a typical baby boomer, being active in my church, the Boy Scouts, and numerous sports activities. I felt I could compete quite well in various sports to the point that I was a 4-year letter winner in football, basketball, and track at Lake Mills High School. In my senior year in 1964, I was the basketball team captain and most valuable player. I even won the 880-yard run at the state track meet. Keep in mind there were no school divisions back then, so I defeated all competitors, no matter what size school they came from the entire state of Wisconsin. I shared the Dick Soper Award with Pat Henner, which is given annually to the outstanding senior athlete. Outside of sports, I like to think I was friendly, fairly popular, and a well-liked student. I was a class officer, served on the student council, and was even on the homecoming court. I must have put in some time for my schoolwork because I was an honor student and was even named Student of the Year as a senior. Wow, with only 69 graduates, maybe that helps. The competition's kind of slim. How I love Lake Mills. What a great place to grow up in the 1950s and 1960s. Maybe being a doctor's son helps. It seems like everyone in town knows who I am. The University of Wisconsin in Madison is where I want to go to school. I plan to enroll in the fall of 1964. The classes are pretty demanding. And then there is the temptation of State Street, the parties, and the girls. My friends Tom Schmeiser and Jack Zimmerman, boy, we have lots of fun together. If I'm not studying or socializing, the three of us are on Rock Lake sailing. I even taught them how to sail. Maybe I didn't spend enough time hitting the books, or maybe I just wasn't focused. Anyway, after 2 years at the UW, I quit. Not a lot of choices back then. If you weren't in college with a draft deferment, selective service would come calling. So I volunteered and went into the Army in 1966. With my athletic ability, basic training wasn't so bad. I even shot expert with the M14 rifle. I heard the Army is introducing a new piece, the M16, that they're using in Vietnam. My parents threw a party for me that I'll never forget in the summer of 1967, before I left for Vietnam. People have told me they could hear the music way across the lake into the wee hours of the morning. I arrived in Vietnam in November 1967 as a member of the 9th Infantry Division Reconnaissance Squad. I was stationed in Quang Tri Province in the northern part of South Vietnam near the DMZ. I already received some facial shrapnel wounds the next month and spent time in the hospital. I recovered and was sent back into combat with again receiving leg shrapnel wounds in February 1968. I was awarded Purple Hearts for both of these wounds. On April 30th, 1968, I received facial and body burns and was flown to a hospital in Yokohama, Japan for treatment. I lived for almost 2 weeks, but my injuries were too severe, and I died May 13th, 1968. I am buried right here. I was the second Lake Mills resident to die in Vietnam. The first was John Emery 9 months earlier, and he is buried right here behind me. Being so well known in the community and a doctor's son, my death really hit this small town hard. People now started to question our involvement in Vietnam, and yet another Lake Mills resident, another Lake Mills son, would die the following year. Another classmate of mine from the class of '64, Richie Bowers. Thank you so much for coming to hear my story. I like visitors, so feel free to stop by for a visit and say a prayer for all of us fallen servicemen and women. Thank you for coming.
Oh, where am I? I know this place so well. Oh, wait, I remember. You see the large monument behind this bush? That was my husband's family plot. His first wife, Mary Rutherford Fargo, is here on this side, along with Enoch. That old, my husband, he's passed now. And little Murdy, their middle daughter, she's there too. I never met her. She died as a child of diphtheria, contracting the disease after picking up a doll from the burn pile of a neighbor's little girl, Cora. She died of diphtheria as well. That's right, it is very contagious disease, so every precaution was taken to prevent its spread, disposing of anything
that couldn't be cleaned. Burning it all was required by law. In fact, Enoch, along with several other Lake Mills men, wrote a village ordinance after Murdy died, requiring the disinfection of homes and disposal of contaminated items in cases of contagious disease. Most of the time, this law was followed. If you come over here, you will see my name, Addie Hoyt Fargo. I was only 29 years old when I died. I was a progressive, forward-thinking woman. Martha was there too, living in the mansion when I died. She could tell you, but she won't. She knew how to keep secrets. Some friend, she and Enoch married less than a year after I died. Funny how she enjoyed all the plush furnishings and linens of the grand mansion after my death. I don't recall what happened. It was all so fast. Newspapers reported I was very active in the women's club activities just days before I passed. I became ill and went to bed. In less than 24 hours, I was dead. According to the newspapers, I sprang up in bed, gasped, and then fell to the bed dead from diphtheria. I heard that poor little Murdy and Cora were sick for several days before succumbing to the disease. Odd. I suppose I should be thankful I did not suffer the normal fate of those with diphtheria. Funny, I don't remember taking my shoes off before going to bed. Oh, nope, there they are. It had taken over so fast. Wait. The last thing I remember was standing at the top of the grand staircase in our mansion on Mulberry Street. I was going somewhere. There was a loud bang. Funny. I laid here for 110 years. Then out of the blue, Rosemary, my great-great-niece, came and promised to find out what happened. I could hear her promise when she stated it standing on my grave. For some reason, I was not buried more than 36 inches underground. It wasn't hard to hear everything over those 110 years, including all the whispers of the villagers. Apparently, my loving husband was in a hurry to bury me, so digging the full 6 feet was not an option. I died at 2 a.m. and was here in my grave by 10 a.m. My sister Anna and brother Eugene didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. I had a glass top sealed coffin. They could have said goodbye without fear of contracting the disease. I was a socialite of Lake Mills. I threw balls for the firemen when I was barely out of high school. I traveled all over the world. I wrote about my adventures, and speaking of them, I was daughter of the American Revolution, descendant of the Mars Candy Bar Factory founders, yet no one attended my funeral other than Enoch and those who dug my grave. Rosemary, my only remaining family, has taken me home with her after seeking as many answers as possible, but to no avail. Doctors studied my bones and teeth, the bits of leather, my shoes with the laces still tied in a perfect bow. Under the protection of the glass shards of the casket viewing top. The casket, my body and clothes, disintegrated from the exposure of frost and thaw being buried so shallow. I'm very thankful Rosemary learned of me from the photo album that I sent to my sister Anna in Denver not long before I was gone. Her family passed it down to her through their own deaths. Now, only these markers remain here of me. I am free of this shallow grave. Free at last.
But thank you everyone for coming out to our cemetery walk today. We certainly appreciate your support and your interest in our efforts to share our local history. Please join us next year. We plan another tour with new characters, and we will be holding it about the same time in October. And if you're interested in volunteering and helping us with our efforts, please contact us at 920-728-2685 or via email at lakemillsastalonhistorical@gmail.com. Thank you.